Welcome to the Write Better Fiction podcast, the show that helps you, well, write better fiction. I'm Shane Miller, urban fantasy author, writing coach, and story geek, and each week I'll be talking to industry experts about the writing craft, publishing, and the business of being an author. Enjoy the show. Hello, fictioneers, and welcome to episode 23 of the Write Better Fiction podcast. Today, I'm chatting to JP Rindfleisch and AB Cohen, co-authors of the Leah Ackerman Urban Fantasy Academy series, all about co-writing fiction, so stay tuned for that. No update from the writing chair this week, which I'll explain next week, and I'll read all the answers to last week's question of the week and this week's question of the week on next week's show. So this week's question is, would you ever consider co-writing a book? And why or why not? If you want early access to episodes and exclusive access to the Fictioneer community on Discord, where you can participate in things like Question of the Week and weekly accountability, you can support the show on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. Head over to patreon.com/writebetterfiction to support the show. When I reach 50 patrons, I'm going to start recording a monthly patron-only Q&A where I answer your writerly questions. Okay, that's about it from me, so let's get into the interview with JP and Abe. Hello, and welcome to the Write Better Fiction podcast. Today, I'm joined by not one, but two guests, JP Rindfleisch and AB Cohen. JP Rindfleisch IX is an author, editor, and podcaster of all things dark, strange, and queer. They write urban fantasy, paranormal comedy, and LGBT fiction. AB Cohen is an author of thrillers, fantasy, and science fiction. He's the good kind of weirdo. That's debatable, but we'll see. But an oddball nonetheless. Together, JP and Abe co-write the fantastic Leah Ackerman Urban Fantasy Academy series. Hi, you two, and welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for having us.
You're so welcome. I noticed Abe said thanks and you didn't, JP. That will be noted.
You're correct.
For future reference.
You are correct.
What a dick. Nevertheless, I am going to start with you, JP, for some unknown reason. Tell us a bit about you. Yeah, I know. Tell us a bit about you and your journey into writing.
Oh, good. I'm glad I have the floor now. Okay. So obviously, like so many other writers, desire to write has kind of been ingrained. But it didn't really go anywhere until about 2017 when I was six years out of college. I've been listening to a ton of podcasts, but that year I decided I needed to actually go out and do something. So I went to Rock-a-Pock, which was an event hosted by Jay Thorne and Zach Bohannon at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and we created an apocalyptic world together. I would say that was really the moment that I was like, oh, like writing can be a thing. It can be a community effort, and it can be something that people can, talk to each other about. And it's not just this secluded realm of writing. So that's really where it started for me.
Cool. And Abe, same question to you.
Well, as you can tell by my accent, I'm an immigrant from Venezuela, and it's been in my mind. Storytelling has been on my mind ever since I was a kid. But as an immigrant, I studied engineering, and you cannot really get a green card by becoming a full-time author. So I studied engineering, was on the workforce for maybe 6 months when I realized that I kind of hated it, or it wasn't really my thing. So that's when I started going into listening to podcasts like JF Penn and Jay Thorne. Started to listen to all these voices and learning that indie publishing was a thing, and that it was something. This was around 2017 as well. And after 1 or 2 months of debating if I should write in English or Spanish, I decided to write in English, and I began my journey then.
Awesome. So JP, can you talk a bit about how your co-writing partnership with Abe began? So what initially drew you to collaborate with each other?
I want to hear this. Bring out the popcorn.
So funny story, but it was another event hosted by Jay Thorne and Zach
Of
Bohannon.
course it was. Those
Of
guys,
course.
man.
Oh, I know, they were monsters. Still are. It was the Authors on a Train 2020, pre-COVID. January was the date that we all joined together in Los Angeles, and then we rode a train all the way up to around San Francisco and stayed in a haunted mansion. But that was the event that was intended to stay in this building together with about 12 authors, and you would pair up with somebody and you would collaborate and write with them. In the Slack prior to that, we were partnered up. Abe and I were partnered up because we both liked epic fantasy, and then we met the day of the train ride, and we hit it off right away. We almost were like awkward instant friends. It was as if we had years together, but realistically we didn't. So it was wild. We hit it off right off the bat. We got to this creepy haunted mansion, and I scared the crap out of Abe the whole time, which was perfect, because then we went from epic fantasy to writing a horror short story together. So really what drew it was I wanted to write with somebody, and this event that we went to basically was the catalyst to that, and it just happened to be a perfect marriage, basically.
Nice.
It
And instant awkward friends are the best, right?
Yeah, of course.
It's like meeting your creative soulmate. It was like, wow, everything flows so well, everything's nice. Then we got into the house, and JP starts just spinning on his, as he's walking, he's spinning, and I'm like, what are you doing? It's like, "Oh, I'm just feeling the energies," and I'm like, huh. Are they good or bad energies? And he was like, something along the lines of, I'll tell you later. And I'm like, great. To this day, we had to sleep in the attic, and he still says that there was someone standing next to my bed the whole time, because JP is a bit of a medium. And I felt it too, because that thing was creepy. I'll send you the photo later. You will see it. But yeah, I feel like that's a good way to start a friendship and a partnership,
Yeah.
with a
Scare the crap
haunted
out of the
man.
other person.
Yeah, bonded for life
Right.
now. That's it.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Okay, so Abe, how do you balance the actual writing process between you? Do you divide up chapters, scenes, or character development, or do you have a different approach? How does it work?
It's a very good question. What we like to do, and given we've been refining this process through the different books that we've written, but the first thing is communication. We have 24/7 communication. I bombard JP with WhatsApp ideas sometimes at odd hours of the night, because that's how my brain works. But the process itself, it starts something like this. We discuss the idea of the next book, given the first, second, or third, whatever book. We discuss it. We have some brainstorm on kind of like where we picture things to go. Then I sit down and I write an outline, and it's a very detailed outline following conflict, choice, and consequence, with a 3-story method strategy that Jay Thorne and Zach Bohannon wrote. And after that, he goes in, and then we do something that I like to call the tricolor scheme, where like I write the outline in black, then he goes in and writes his comments in green, I believe, and then I write my comments to his comments in blue, and then then we grab all of that, we talk about it through 1, 2, 3 meetings, and then the final one is written in red, essentially. So it's a red outline, and then red like blood. And then and then from that moment forward, I write the first draft. Then I give it to JP. He, goes over it a couple of times, and then we begin sort of the developmental edits with an editor. I take that, add my own comments to it, then JP takes that, and then JP takes it the rest of the way. So after that, he goes through with the line editor and all of that, and the proofreader and beta readers and stuff. So I mean, it's a very back and forth kind of process. I think I'm more heavily in the beginning, big picture, phase process, while JP focus on the finesse and on the detail of the scenes and things like that. And I think that that overall it meshes up really well.
Yeah, that's great. And it is a back and forth process, which I'll come to in a moment. I do feel like Jay and Zach are getting way too much airtime on this podcast, though. So,
Yeah.
and
We need to stop.
they
We're
have
getting
enough.
paid for this.
They have enough airtime already. We don't need to. We don't need to carry on with that. So JP, Abe touched on it a bit there. Your planning process and how you go back and forth. Say there's a difference between what one of you wants to do versus the other. How would you come to an agreement on things like major plot points in the series?
We hash it out, to be honest. We'll talk about it, and there's some bits of the story that we automatically recognize, like where the weight of that comes from. Obviously, when it comes to anything related to our main character, Leah, who is Jewish, and it is about the Jewish aspect of the story that we don't want to diminish, most of that gets defaulted to Abe, because I want that to be highlighted in the story in the best and most respectful manner I can. And then when you get to like the creepy occulty stuff, I mean, Abe also writes that sort of thing, but I kind of, go a little bit deeper and look into like creepy witchcraft books or something like that to just try and pull some of those pieces out of it. But really it's the key is communication, regardless of what it is. If you disagree on something, you talk it through, and at the end of the day, the product that you make is neither yours nor theirs. It is simply a piece of art that exists that retains both of your voices. So to me, I really think about, like, is it something worth having that disagreement over, or is it something that you can, be like, okay, but what if? And I think that really comes in with the whole aspect of improv. You don't say no, you say yes and, or you say yes, but, like, let's continue and let's go on. You never reach that absolutely not, unless there are those key topics that you've talked about that you're like, I never want to talk about this in my work. And those should exist, and those boundaries should exist, and that comes out the first time you guys get together and the contract you write together.
Yeah, that's great. And actually, a follow-up on that, you mentioned contracts there. So what, obviously, without going into specifics on your particular contract, what does that look like for you guys? Like, how did you work out that contract?
Yeah, we took a contract from someone who shall not be named because we've named him too much. And we looked at what kind of contracts they had for their collaborations, and we adjusted it to ours. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's a lot of 50-50 when we're writing work together, and we hashed out what happens when one of us dies, what happens if we get into a major disagreement and we need that mediation, because regardless of how close you are in friendship, at the end, like, this is a business. You are getting money for this. So I would say to anyone who is looking to do this and looking to get money out of whatever product they're creating, that before that product goes live for people to purchase, there should be a contract signed.
Yeah, it's a smart thing to do, because you never know what could happen in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, even if let's say one of us wants to write a spin-off or things like that, that's also laid out there, right? Because that's a big one. Maybe I want to write a spin-off, but JP wants to, I don't know, it's busy with something else, like one of his bajillion podcasts, and he doesn't have time for that. We have specifically laid out how the process would look like if we were to write a spin-off with only one of us writing it, versus and sort of like different choices and different paths that we take. So we really try to be very detailed on the contract. And I don't think we've read the contract since we've signed it, but because we haven't reached that point of disagreement, because again, we're very in tune in terms of what we want and what we need and what we're aiming for. But you always have to think of those possibilities, because you never know what life is going to throw at you.
Yeah, great. So Abe, you touched on this earlier, but co-writing does seem to involve a lot of back and forth, and you spoke a little bit about your process and how you each comment to each other. I imagine that must have been hard in the beginning, but what tools or methods have you used to streamline that process over time? Like, has it got any easier? What does it look like now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like I said, like the three color method outline, it's something that we do on Google Docs. It's just simple Google Docs. My recommendation to people, don't waste a lot of money on tools at the beginning, right? If Google Docs is free, use Google Docs. It's not rocket science. It's not gonna be the most like sparkly thing, but the best way to start in this business is to get to writing and get that discipline going, because it's a matter of repetition and muscle memory. Other tools we use, I mean, we go on Zoom and we meet on Zoom every Sunday, and we have done this since 2020. Of course, there's exceptions. I mean, there was a Sunday where I was getting married, so clearly we were not gonna meet that day. But JP was at the wedding, and so so it was fine. We had a mini conversation there. It's like, oh, we should do this and that. Okay, great. And then I continue with my wedding. But I mean, yeah, Zoom is one, and WhatsApp, constant communication, Google Docs. We use ProWriting 8 for grammar stuff, just to flush things out. And yeah, and Vellum. We like Vellum and how it does the formatting and the layout as well. So those are tools. There's nothing fancy at the moment that we're doing. So
Yeah, that's good. And it's a good reminder to keep it simple, because I guess these things could get very overcomplicated if you let them.
yeah, I think that the same way writers can get caught up with world building, they can get caught up with all the tools available out there. Oh, and I have to also mention BookFunnel, of course. I think BookFunnel is the backbone of a lot of writing businesses. I mean, whenever we're doing freebies, short stories that we're giving away, or just the infrastructure behind, our email sign up sheets and all that, that's all through BookFunnel. And for email, we use SendFox, which it gave us a ton of subscribers right off the bat, so we don't have to be paying monthly. We just did a one-time payment and that was it. So those are pretty much the tools that we use. But again, like you said, the aim is keep it simple, keep it cheap.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we've kind of touched on how you might come to an agreement on things like major plot points. So I'm not sure that you've had massive creative differences from what I'm hearing, but have they arisen, and how does that affect the co-writing process, or if you can speak from any experience you've had with that in the past?
Yeah, there was a time where I can't remember the exact topic it was, but we did have a pretty significant difference, and we got on a Zoom and we talked about it, because that was the thing. Is we just needed to talk it out. We needed to understand both of our perspectives and really say, like, this is where I'm coming from, this is where you're coming from, and then where can we take the story from here. And honestly, it only took like an hour-long conversation, but the key with any collaboration is communication, and you need to talk it out. And then, like I had said before, you have to give and take. It's not your baby. It is only half of your baby.
Yeah. No, I do remember, like, we've had plenty of these disagreements when it comes to our, like, small disagreements of like, oh, I think this, I think that. But there's two things, right? First, I remember one specific one. I think it was in book 1 or book 2, where like I had written that Leah killed 3 people, just 3 possessed demons, just because she was a badass and she was mad and she just killed them. And then he was like, wait, can we talk about this? And I'm like, no. And I was like, she needs to go on this dark path. And then we talk about it, and I understood his point that was off the table but it wasn't because JP said so. It's because it made sense for the story. And again,
Yep.
we always go back to this. It's like, we're not gonna have a character do this or do that just because I want to or because JP wants to. It's because it makes sense for the story, and that's key. It's always our purpose here is to make the best story possible. It's not to make my story or his story. It's to make the best story possible, and that's something that we keep going back to. And disagreements are fair. Like, it's part of the process. The other thing that I think it's wonderful is when we have a disagreement, sometimes it's when we come up with the best solution. So sometimes I'll have an idea that JP didn't necessarily like, and he will do the okay, maybe, but, or yes, but how about this? And then he starts stopping that idea, and then I like that idea a little better, but then I like to do something on top of that, and then he likes that, and then we start kind of like upping each other on like how crazy can it get, until one of goes maybe crosses a line and it's like, okay, maybe we shouldn't, like, I don't know, kill babies or something. But no, it doesn't get to that, but just saying, like, we try to up one another and work through it, and a lot of the times the disagreements are gonna create that sort of best new thing. So
Yeah, definitely. So Abe, then what would be your advice to other authors who are looking to form a co-writing partnership? Because a lot of people are interested in that, but they don't know where to start.
it's interesting. Okay, so if you're a new person and you don't know where to start, first thing to do is to expose yourself to new authors. Join Facebook group, like follow people, start talking to people, and go to events. Go, go grab a beer with someone or a group of people, or a tea. It doesn't have to be a beer, right? But I know that there's a lot of people that are introverts, but understand that 90% of the community is introverted. It's just like, I'm very extroverted, but I'm an outlier, But everyone's feeling the same sort of scares that you are. Get out there and get to know people. It's a great way to see if you click with someone. And so do that. Also, there's specific events that are for co-authorship. Like JP and I met at a specific co-authorship event. I would say once you think you found that person, don't jump right ahead and write contracts, and don't start writing books together. That's too big of a mountain to climb. Start with a short story. Start discussing how you're gonna do the short story, what you want to do, what do you want to get out of, what does the other person want to get out of. Because maybe for the other person it's just a creative outlet, and maybe for you it's a full-on business that you want to explore. So have those conversations, and they're going to be difficult conversations. The second night that me and JP were sleeping in that haunted mansion, we literally talked business, and we put everything, like, this is where I work, this is how much money I have, this is like, we had a really transparent conversation because we both wanted to start a business together, So again, open conversations and start small, test the waters, and then from there escalate.
Yeah, that's great advice. Anything to add to that, JP?
I want to reiterate the start small. We wrote a short story together, and that's how we knew, and that's how we discovered how our writing styles meshed and how to adjust for it. Prime example is when I came in and did the edits on that short story, I completely erased Abe's voice And then we had a conversation about it. And we adjusted and fixed the story so that it properly represented the both of us, because I had never done that before. So I didn't know how to co-write. So starting small is always key.
Yeah, that's great. And I hadn't prepped you for this in advance, but I was lucky enough to read, well, I've read every single advanced copy of your book. I think I was lucky enough to read them before they even came out. And it is a fantastic series. Highly recommend. Yeah, it's great. Could you explain the premise behind the series and what actually happens? Because I think it's fantastic and people need to hear about it. Either one of you.
Okay. So the story follows Leah Ackerman, who has recently discovered that her mother was part of a secret society and that she is directly involved in that secret society. The tagline of the first book is, "What if you discovered magic the night your father murdered your mother?" So right there, you know something dark happened. You've got demons, you've got secret societies, and you have a magic system based off of the Jewish Kabbalah that we were able to approach from both Abe's understanding of Judaism and my creepy occult understanding of the world. And we meshed those things together, and we created something kind of fun that really takes Leah on a rough but exciting journey.
Yeah, that is a pretty good summary, and I'd expect you to give that summary because you wrote the book. However, I have a bone to pick with both of you, and this is a spoiler warning, so if you don't want spoilers, just skip ahead.
Skip ahead.
Right. I'm quite pissed off with both of you.
Good.
And I'm going to tell you why. I think you know why, but I'm going to say it anyway. So at the end of the third book, you killed possibly my favorite character in the entire series.
Spoiler.
Right.
Yeah.
I won't say who the character is because that would be too much of a spoiler. But why?
Death happens.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I think that was something that both Abe and I, we talked about it, and we were both pretty adamant that this happens. We don't want to write a happy story. This is a dark story, and there are things that Leah needs to experience and needs certain things to happen in her life in order to grow to the character we want her to be. And unfortunately, we both love that character deeply, but that character, it was their time.
Also, to be honest with you, Shane, when I wrote that scene, I cried. Okay. We feel that. We feel like I love these characters, and I love every single one that we made. And when we wrote that scene, you know, I tear up. I sent a picture to JP. That's like, this is what we've done too. Yeah, he laughed. He laughed evil. He did like an evil laugh too, which was interesting. But yeah, there is also something to be said about the realistic. Like, we wanted the story to feel realistic. No one's safe, not even Leah. And so it's part of this journey. And to our readers, I'm sorry, love you all, but it had to happen.
I'm not sorry.
And
feel that trauma.
And well, I was gonna say, no one's safe. So just have to keep reading.
Yeah, and to be fair, all jokes aside, it was a fantastic twist. And I'll definitely be reading the next one. I would have been anyway, but I will be now. Okay, so this is the Write Better Fiction podcast, and this is my favorite question, so much so that I ask all my guests. So I'll start with you, JP Rindfleisch. Why do you write fiction?
So this is twofold. I write one because of a revolt, basically, against the norm. When I was working the day job and I really was moving up that ladder, and I needed to take these supervisory skills courses in order to become a potential manager for the company I was working for. One day we were told we needed to write a list of all the things that we didn't have time for. And of course, everyone is like, well, I don't have time to watch my kids, or I don't have time to do laundry or clean. And I'm over here like, I don't have time to do art. I don't have time to write. Then we had to go in front of the class, and instead of saying, I don't have time for, we had to say, I don't want to. So I had to say, I don't want to write. And verbally saying that was like a vitriolic anger that just brewed inside of me. And I said, you know what? The reason I don't have time to write is because I was too focused on this working for somebody else kind of concept. And I was like, you know what? That's not what I want to do. That's not at all what I'm interested in. And that really drove the desire to listen to podcasts until I reached this breaking point where I needed to go to an event to meet people. And since then it has just exploded. I feel like I've met so many wonderful authors, and I've been able to really hone my craft since then. So that's why I write in general. I write fiction because I want to create the stories without the need for reality, I guess. I like to kind of create these magical and mystical things because that really puts a different reflection of this world by still expanding on it in these like fantastical elements. It's stuff that I grew up on, and it's stuff that I still love to write today.
Nice. And AB Cohen, why do you write fiction?
Well, first, I never heard that story, JP. That's messed up. Damn, that's brutal.
It is
Talk
brutal.
about corporate America.
Yeah.
I write fiction because since I was a kid, I would love to get lost in imaginary worlds that push me away from the mundane things of life. I think that 99% of the people in the world live very monotonous, very sort of boring lives in a way. And that me included is some, so having this creative escape where the rules of society, the rules of physics, the rules of the world in general can be broken and can be reshaped, has always fascinated me. And so to me, writing fiction gives me this creative outlet to let my imagination run wild and push the boundaries of what creativity is. So it's a joy, it's a challenge, and it's something that I deeply cherish and that I love to do, because I also open that world to other people to come and enjoy. So in a way, it's kind of like a door into our collected imagination. And to me, that's beautiful. That's what life is about.
That is great. So JP, could you tell everyone a little bit about where they can find you and everything you do?
Yeah, you can go to jprindfleisch9th.com. That's jprindfleischix.com, a word salad of a website. And you can check out all of my writings there, and all of my socials. I also stream on Twitch, which you can find through my socials.
Fantastic. And Abe, the same question to you.
You can find me at abcohenwrites.com. That's my website. You can sign up and get our first short story that we ever written, the rules there. You can also find me on Instagram at abcohenwrites.com or Twitter, abcohen. And yeah, I'm active in all of those. So,
and we're both on Threads.
Oh yes,
we're both on Threads. That's right. Very
everyone's
early.
on Threads.
very early. We're both on Threads. Yeah.
Yes, that is true. You're the first people to mention that, but yes, everyone is now obsessed with Threads. That's perfect. Thank you so much for coming on the show, both of you. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
I hope you enjoyed the interview with JP and Abe and picked up a ton of actionable tips on co-writing fiction. Join me next week when I'll be chatting to Morgana Best all about selling books direct to readers. Have a great writing week. Thanks for listening to the Write Better Fiction podcast. Remember to hit subscribe on your favorite podcatcher and leave a review, and we'll chat again next time.